Hello, what is going on, guys? Hockey Guy 1 here. Welcome to my review of Star Wars Return of the Jedi. So Star Wars Return of the Jedi is directed by Richard Marquand and stars Mark Hamill, Ian McDiarmid, James Earl Jones, Frank Oz, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, Billy D. Williams, Anthony Daniels, and Alec Guinness. So the story is about Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, Lando, and all of our main characters basically go out to try and save Han from Jabba, and after they do that, they have to go on a mission to the forest moon of Endor to try and deactivate the shield generator of the Death Star 2 so they can go out and try to blow it up and basically have the galaxy go in peace again. The story is very good, and again, like the first two movies, it's very complex. But this movie does really work for it because it does obviously start off kind of similar to where the last one ended off. Han Solo's kind of already taken away, and obviously this is probably a couple of years later, but they do end up trying to go and rescue him, which makes sense to try and continue off from the last movie, and that kind of is really engaging, and it really makes sense to do it. And then there's kind of, after that, just a whole through to try and stop the Empire. Sure, they do bring another Death Star, which it's kind of controversial to a lot of people. But I don't really mind it. It's pretty good for what it is and how the story brings it. It makes sense that they'd want to build another Death Star. The first one was this destructive weapon and ended up getting blown up, so I feel like it does make sense for this movie to have a second Death Star to try and destroy. Yeah, and just this whole story about that I feel like really works for the progression of the trilogy. The structure is very good. You got the first act, which is basically just the whole mission to try and save Han from Jabba. And then you got the second act where they kind of go on to Endor. As well as Yoda dying and all that. So then there's the third act, which is basically where they end up having this huge show. What's gonna happen? A bunch of rebel pilots trying to go into the Death Star while there's Han, Chewbacca kind of down with a bunch of rebels trying to destroy the generator while Luke's kind of up on the Death Star to fighting Darth Vader and trying to resist the dark side. And I do really like the structure. I feel like it really works. Sure, there's always the kind of Java thing that has kind of come into place to some people. I do feel like it makes sense story-wise, in my opinion. Have it like that, just make it complex like this, it really works, in my opinion. And this whole structure does really work for this trilogy and does really move on to the story well. Pacing is once again very good. This one's actually a little longer than its predecessors. It kind of extends 2 hours and 15 minutes. But it honestly doesn't really feel like it's that much longer than its predecessors. It really feels like a complete story. So it feels like it's just as long. They keep you engaged throughout it, and it does feel connected, kind of making it feel like the runtime is just that long, if not a bit shorter. The action is very engaging in this movie. Probably some of the best of this entire trilogy. It's very good how it is. You got, of course, the lightsaber duel between Luke and Darth Vader, which obviously not as iconic as the one from the last movie, but I still feel like this one's kind of on par with that fight, as this lightsaber duel is also just very engaging. There's a lot of tension to it. Will Luke move over to the dark side? And will that's pretty much just all the stakes to it, and it's just very engaging to watch it, and you can really feel like Luke might be able to turn to the dark side, which is not exactly exactly you want. And of course, there's like the whole Battle of Endor where they're trying to like destroy the shield generator, and that's pretty engaging as well. And there's a lot of stakes to it. I mean, and they kind of ran into like the Emperor's trap, so there's kind of like a risk of death for them, which is just makes it feel like there's a lot of stakes to it. And then, of course, like the whole Death Star 2 attack with Lando and all of them, and it's just that one's just very engaging. I mean, he has obviously seen something similar to that in the original, but in this movie they do it just as well, in my opinion. I mean, it's very engaging for this, as they do kind of run into a trap. There's a lot of stakes to it, and it's just very fun to watch, like these spaceships flying, around in space and fighting each other to try and get to the Death Star. Luke Skywalker pretty much completes his whole character arc in this movie, as he does end up resisting the dark side by the end of this movie, and it's just like very good character for him. I mean, he kind of like grows up. You can kind of see how much stronger he's getting. I mean, he's got like a new lightsaber and everything. It's like just really makes his character more engaging. And then of course he has to like see Yoda die, which is another death to put on him. It just kind of makes you feel really sad for him. And then of course the end when Darth Vader dies and he has to see his father dying. This guy's definitely been put through a lot, and that is like a big thing about his character, and he's definitely put through a lot, and 2 more deaths in this movie just kind of makes it more sad for him. And just not only that, just how much they grow him throughout this movie into resisting the dark side just really works out for this movie, as it just kind of shows how he's like this whole protagonist of this franchise, and just really works out well as that, and is just really well done with his character arc complete. Princess Leia is also like a huge role, obviously. She always does in this trilogy, and in this movie, she is just a very good character. I mean, it's definitely a lot to her. I mean, now you can definitely see how much different she was from the original. In this movie, she stands up for herself even more than she does like the last movie. I mean, you can really see how much she changed since the original, and you can just see how much her character grows throughout this movie. I mean, there's a lot to it. She does end up hitting Han by the end, and it just really helps out, as that's like a very good relationship on this. And then, of course, they do end up revealing that she was the sister of Luke, and that's just something that's a twist that kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, it's not exactly something that you would have expected, but it makes sense. I mean, I like how they end up doing that. I mean, it really is good how they end up, and it's like a big part of her character now, and it's just really good how they end up developing her into standing up strong, and her relationship with Han, and just how she's related to Luke. Han Solo's also kind of gone a long way since the original. I mean, he's slightly less cocky in this movie than he was in the original too, and it's just really good as they end up doing his character. I mean, he has more plans now, doesn't really just go in cocky as he did before. I mean, obviously he's still a little cocky, and he's gonna get through it, but he's definitely less cocky, which is how you can see how far his character's gone. And like I mentioned with Leia, of course, his relationship with Leia is just really well developed, and so they do end up getting together by the end, and it really makes sense. R2-D2, C-3PO, of course, comic reliefs, and again, pretty much work. I mean, they're pretty funny at times, and just are really lovable characters. But there's also new comic reliefs called the Ewoks, obviously, and honestly, I know a lot of the fandom doesn't really like them that much. Me, personally, I'm fine with them. I mean, they don't really annoy me that much. I mean, they're just kind of cute, so they work as kind of a comic relief. And then there's also just how they have all these weapons to try to like stand up against the Empire, which kind of makes them pretty, and I mean, it's pretty unique how they kind of use different kind of weapons to try to step against the Empire, which is something I really like about it. It's just that I feel like they're very unique in their own way. Lando Calrissian also does kind of grow a lot in this movie. I mean, in the last movie, he definitely like was kind of being manipulated, and then we're kind of realizing it, like taking sides with our heroes. And this movie, it definitely kind of shows how far he's gone since then. I mean, he's obviously still with our heroes. He does a lot of plans with them, and then he ends up even blowing the Death Star too. I mean, and that's just something that's like really huge about his character. That's something that like makes him super memorable, and I really like how they end up doing that with his character, or making him kind of end up doing that by the end, because it just kind of shows how much his character has grown since the last movie, which is something that this movie does really well, is that showing how much the characters grow since the last movie by kind of showing that they're doing more. And it really works, especially for Lando, as like I mentioned before, he destroyed the Death Star too by the end of this movie, and that just kind of shows that he's really just a good person. And this guy says something they didn't really know too much because of how he was kind of manipulated in the last movie. And Yoda, obviously, not as much screen time as he did end up dying in this movie, but I do feel like just the way they sent him off was just a really good way to send off such a powerful character from last movie. I mean, he's such a good mentor character in last movie. Now this movie, he's still trying to give Luke tips on his deathbed, and basically just trying to reveal how there's another Skywalker that exists, and that is really good. I mean, it just kind of shows us how much of a good mentor character he is, and it's just like a perfect send-off for him, as it is kind of roughly completed here. And I mean, this is just such a powerful character that was written very well last movie, ending up dying, like giving away a last speech like that. It's just a perfect way to send off a very good character. Obi-Wan, just like the last movie, is like kind of a force ghost in a couple scenes in this movie, and I do feel like, again, since he's a mentor figure in these movies, it really kind of works. I mean, just some of the tips that he gives to Luke just really help him out. I mean, as well kind of revealed that the Darth Vader twist from last movie is true, and as well as that Leia is kind of Luke's sister. I mean, that's kind of like what he revealed in this movie, and it's not only helped Luke's character out a lot, but it also kind of just really helped out his character a lot too. I mean, it just made him a better mentor character, and just really just worked well for this movie. Darth Vader's redemption arc back to Anakin Skywalker is pretty much complete in this movie. I mean, he is just very good how they end up doing this so well. I mean, in the last two movies, very much a ruthless villain, very evil. And in this movie, I mean, of course, kind of starts out still that way. But over time in this movie, he kind of changes. I mean, he ends up saving Luke and destroying the Emperor pretty much in his destiny. I mean, that was his whole redemption arc back to Anakin. And that was just like a very powerful death that they ended up having him in this ending. It's just very good how he ends up controlling his destiny and then coming back to Anakin Skywalker. I mean, it's such a powerful redemption arc that it just made you feel sorry for one of the biggest villains when he died. I mean, that's how well they wrote to this redemption arc. The Emperor is just, without a doubt, a very good villain. I mean, he's very ruthless, without a doubt. He's full-on evil, as pretty much he's just trying to manipulate Luke over to the dark side. He puts the rebels into a trap that they didn't really see it coming. I mean, it's just like very evil. I mean, it just kind of shows how evil he is in this movie. I mean, he's like goes more onto it in the prequels. I mean, but in this movie, there's no doubt about it. He's still evil. I mean, And when Luke didn't want to turn to the dark side, he starts lightning striking him, and then at this his end pretty much got what he deserved. I mean, he was full on evil, and Darth Vader tracks him down a well, and pretty much that's what he deserved. Or that's kind of an ending that he deserved. It happened, and it's a pretty good way to do it. It's kind of a good way to like wrap up this trilogy. Acting once again is very good. I'm not gonna go too in depth because pretty much they're good for like the same reasons as they were in the last movies. I mean, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, James Earl Jones, and then Frank Oz and Alec Guinness. All those returning members, they did just as good as they did in the other movies. They all still felt like their characters, their deliveries. And there's Ian McDermott, who's new, so I will mention him. I do feel like he is just like a perfect role to fit for like an evil character like the Emperor, because it's like he's got the laugh on put, and the evil laugh is what's like really stands out for the Emperor, and Ian McDermott's laugh for it is just very intimidating and really works out well. It's whenever he like says a line, it just feels so evil because he just does the delivery so well. Visuals once again are very good, and again it's kind of practical because computers didn't exist at the time, so it just still looks convincing. I mean, it's really impressive how each and every one of these movies kind of use practical effects that like they're supposed to be done because that's all they could do back in the 80s. Still hold up to this day. I mean, like every time they're in space, you see the Death Star and all these spaceships, it still looks really convincing to this day. The cinematography is very good, once again, and a lot of this movie, it's kind of using wide shots, and they'll pretty much work. I mean, it makes sense, right? And then, of course, all the close-ups kind of used a lot during whenever there's the Emperor interrogating Luke, which really work for those scenes because the whole point of those scenes is basically to show off emotions of Luke, and so I do feel like it really works for the scenes as it goes. Then there's the lighting, which is very good. I mean, a lot of this movie is kind of dark, but it makes sense, kind of dark, but then by the end it's kind of more light up, so it makes sense because it's more happy, and then even with that, each scene is lit enough so you can see it, so I do feel like it works well. And there's the set designs, which do very good. I mean, the whole looks of Endor still is very good. I mean, kind of deciding it like in a forest, and it really works for the movie. I mean, it's creative, it's new, it's different for like this whole trilogy, and I do like the decision to kind of like put it into a forest, and I definitely did choose the right forest for it, and I definitely like it. And then of course like all the set designs, like Jabba's whole place, and like all the scenes on Tatooine, those look very good, and I definitely think they did a very good job with set designs here. To be honest, I don't really have any negatives with this movie. So overall, Star Wars Return of the Jedi is another masterpiece into the original trilogy, and kind of puts it off as one of the best trilogies of all time. And this is even my second favorite movie of all time, and even my favorite Star Wars movie. So I'm going to give Star Wars Return of the Jedi a 10 out of 10. That was my review of Star Wars Return of the Jedi. What are your thoughts on Star Wars Return of the Jedi? Tell me in the comments below. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.